Good morning, everyone. Hope you all can hear me. Go ahead and put in the chat if you can. That would be great. Just want to test this real quick. And okay, great, perfect. So good morning. So glad you could join us today for a special HR user group meeting where the main focus is going to be on full position management. We have a few presenters today, starting with Vicki Bradley, Associate Vice Chancellor in HR and EOC, Christine Williams, HR Business Systems Manager, Dave Turner, Senior HR Business Analyst, and Anita Collins, Change Management Manager from ITS. We're also joined by a couple HR business analysts, Corey Mims and Kari Farrell, who are going to help us with some Q&A at the end of the presentation. Couple quick webinar housekeeping things. Please use the chat box to ask your questions. We'll be keeping track of those questions coming in, and we will address them at the end of the presentation. This webinar is being recorded. The recording and the slides will be posted on the Connect Carolina user info website next week. You can find those at ccinfo.unc.edu. Just click on the heading HR and Payroll User Group, and you'll be able to find this recording along with all of the other user groups prior. So we have a lot to cover today, a lot of topics on the agenda, starting from the strategic direction and why full position management. We'll talk about the different changes, reports, all of the work going on to make this happen. And we'll also talk about the timeline and what we're doing to prepare for the change. And then we'll wrap it up with your questions and we'll have some answers for you. So without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Vicki Bradley to talk about the strategic direction.
Thanks, Rebecca. Good morning, everyone. I'm Vicki Bradley, an Associate Vice Chancellor in Human Resources and Equal Opportunity and Compliance. So I do want to start talking at first about the strategic direction. So the university's strategic direction is to implement full position management in Connect Carolina. That means that all appointments will be associated with the position. So why are we doing this? Right now, we have some jobs, such as SHRA and EHRA non-faculty jobs that are in positions. And we have some jobs, such as faculty appointments and others, that are not. One of the reasons we'd like to have all jobs associated with positions is that you can track information about the job regardless of whether there is an incumbent in it. So right now, when we want to know whose job duties make them an responsible employee, according to Title IX, or whose job duties make the person a CDME, communicable disease mandatory employee, we want to know that, we have to store that information on the employee's job record in Connect Carolina. Because employees come and go, we have to periodically reassess who all are in those roles. That involves sending out spreadsheets and having HR representatives make the determination of who is in those roles. When we go to full position management, we'll be able to have those attributes eventually stored on the position. And then as people come and go, regardless of who is in the position, we'll know that the person has those job responsibilities or that job role. So we won't have to go through the exercise of sending out those spreadsheets periodically to do that evaluation. Another possible use is eventually setting role-based security by position so that we can eliminate or at least streamline the access request process. People will know by what position someone is in, what access they should have to the system. Again, that's a stretch, that's a future goal, but it is something that would be optional for us to do going forward once we get into full position management. Implementing full position management will also enable the university to have more visible staffing plans. When positions are established, we'll be able to see what employees are in the positions, and when they leave, who next assumes that position. So we can track the history of what happens to the positions in a department. Right now, people are tracking that kind of information. They're just doing it in spreadsheets and inside systems. Now they'll be able to do it in Connect Carolina itself. And finally, if everyone is in a position, the system will keep organizational relationships intact, even when a supervisor leaves a position. Another reason why we're moving to full position management is to help with the system office reporting. The system office requires us to send them a monthly feed of data and requires a position for each employee. And they are expanding those reporting requirements to include reporting on secondary jobs and the associated supplemental pay. We have a custom table in PeopleSoft that we're using right now to store position information, even though we don't really technically have positions. So we're storing it in a table that's behind the scenes, but it's not something that departments can modify. We basically store incumbent information and report that to the system office. So by having actual positions, departments will be able to update the data, will be able to send it to the system office and get rid of that large customization that we have behind the scenes for the data that we need to report to the system office. Also, by having positions, it will reduce the complexity of the HR payroll system. Right now, as I mentioned before, we have some people in positions, we have some people not in positions. So whenever we do anything, we have to explain if the person's in a position, you do a process one way. If a person's not in a position, you might do a process a different way. So all of our procedures, our communications, our training, our reporting, everything has to be done depending on whether or not a person is in a position. So if everyone is in a position, everything will be much more simplified in the system and also with our processes and our communications and training. And then finally, last but not least, by moving to full position management, we will have the foundation for future better position budgeting so that people can keep track more of what positions are filled, what positions are vacant, and it will set the stage for a different kind of budgeting going forward. Should the university decide to implement a new budgeting tool at a future point in time, having such position data would be critical.
Thank you, Vicki. Now we'll turn that over to Dave Turner to talk about some of the changes that we'll be seeing. Hi, Dave.
Hey, thanks a lot. I appreciate it. There are 4 categories of changes that we're going to talk about today. One is just the overall process of position management. We're going to talk about changes to the position EPAR that you'll see. We're going to talk about some changes that are occurring through cleanups, and then just a few tips and facts. So let's go ahead and just jump right in to the process. We do call it full position management for a reason, and that is because all positions are going to have or all jobs will have a position. All appointments will have a position moving forward. I'll try not to read all the slides to you, but on the left there you see who currently has a position number. To the right, those are the folks that we will be moving into positions as a part of this project. So that really is the overarching change that causes everything else to happen here. Looking at the next one, for the most part, each position is going to be allowed to have one person in it, so one head count per position. This is because so much information is shared when you have multiple people in a position that it's almost impossible to have them exactly match up. And so there are 3 groups we're going to allow it for where this doesn't become a problem, and they're listed here: the EHRA students, faculty contingent workers, and then our EHRA zero-based rate. For the most part, these groups do share the basic attributes. Everything has to be the same for you to have multiple headcounts in these positions. And then where you're using the position budget amount field, you should be reflecting the total budget for all of the incumbents, not just what one position budget would be, but if you have 3 people, you would multiply, or you would add all 3 of the budget amounts together. All right. This is probably one of the largest changes that some folks are going to need to get used to. Some updates that can be done today with one EPAR are going to need 2. And that's because you're going to need to start with the position and then update the job. And so just a couple of examples of this. Right now, if you're hiring faculty, you just need to use the hire form. In the future, you're going to need to create the position that you're going to hire that person into. That form will need to execute, and then you have a hire EPAR that you'll initiate to hire them into that position. The same is true with an FTE change. In that case, you're going to update the FTE on the position EPAR and execute that through, so it will then load down to job. And then after that's executed, you'll want to have a job change EPAR to change the compensation amount for the actual job itself. I've said it both times, but I just want to remind everybody, those first actions will need to execute before you do the next ones. So looking at some of the other changes, we have removed the funding grid from the position form now. And the good news behind that is that budget approvers will no longer need to approve positions. This has been seen, I think, overall as a big positive, and should speed things up a little bit. Another change to the process, fund swaps are going to always need to reference position number. We are not able to make large changes to our current 2.9 forms. And so in the case of fund swaps, when you go in and initiate them, you will need to initiate it on the position and not the appointment. And I would just add to that, that if you are approving fund swaps, you will also want to make sure that you don't see appointment level fund swaps coming through. You could just recycle those back and have them change it to the position number. One other change that I think is a big positive, student originators are going to be updated a bit so that they can make updates to positions. They're also going to be able to see more data in the system, and there are just going to be some basic security updates that are going to make those a little more useful, I think. All right. Let's see. So this I consider our kind of our recruiting slide. And so the bullets here are looking at that. First and foremost, we're going to be flagging positions to be sent to people admin. So we're going to need to create those positions, and they'll be created and updated before sending them over to people admin. And that includes faculty as well. Some of the changes in people admin, SHRA permanent and faculty permanent positions are going to work the same way that the EHRA non-faculty do now. The position description information is going to be read-only in people admin. For SHRA temporary, faculty temporary, and our postdocs, the data is going to be fed over, but it will be editable in people admin, so updates can be made there as needed. And then for anybody who hires from an open rank, you will need to go ahead and update the position afterwards. When the person's hired, you'll want to either specify the position or create a new one to hire them into after you do the open hire. Okay. Those are all the major changes to the process. Now we'll talk for a few minutes about changes to the EPAR that you all are going to see. Right now, the reports to field, or in the new form, the reports to field is going to be required and used consistently for all employees. This is going to be really helpful where having an org chart in place helps our processes. And this is going to really get the org chart in order so that we can begin using it the way it needs to be used. We do have position description information now on a position summary page. And as a part of that, the minimum education and experience requirements field is going to be read only for our EHRA non-faculty and SHRA permanent temp folks. We also have a page now for position principal functions, and that page will show for SHRA permanent as well as EHRA employees. I already mentioned before, the funding grid is no longer on a position EPAR, so that saves a little bit of time and space. And then where you currently have an allocated budget field on the form, we are going to rename that position budget amount. Just a couple of new fields have been added. The first two are just helping us track some of our compliance with immunization and bloodborne pathogens. We talked about the recruiting system flag. That's where we'll flag what needs to go over to people admin. And then we have a new section that deals with campus security authority. We need to be tracking our compliance with some of that information as well. And so that will be covered as part of the new form. We also have a couple of new buttons on the EPAR. Save is a button that originators have. If you get halfway done and decide you want to go to lunch and not time out and lose everything while you're gone, you can click the save button and it will save it. When you come back, you will just go back into the resubmit and it will pull up as if in the current form you would submit it, you would be able to pull it back up and resubmit. That's what it'll look like when you've saved it. It won't submit or go anywhere. It'll just stay in your box until you come back and finish it. Sort of the same on the other side, we have a hold button for approvers. If you're an approver and you're looking into something and you're worried one of your co-workers is going to grab it and start working it as well, you can put it on hold and it will actually take it out of everybody's inbox so that you are looking at it and you don't have to worry about them snaking it on you and doing something with it. All right, those are all the changes for the EPAR. We have asked for folks to make a number of changes out on campus via cleanup projects that we've been working through. And one of those cleanup projects, Corey Mims and Ann Sager have been talking about quite a bit. This is the primary purpose of the organization. A lot of our HR officers have provided us the information, and it will self-populate if it's been provided on the form. So if we get it prior to go live still, we're going to load it into current positions, and we're going to make sure that it is preloading for anything that you're trying to create. If we don't get the primary purpose of your organization, then departments are going to have to manually enter that for each EPAR that they go in and either create an update on the position. So it really is helpful to have that information there. So it just is entered for you as you're moving through the form. All right, the next cleanup item. Nope, you can go. Thanks, thanks, Rebecca. You can go on. This one is, as you can tell, kind of important. And it really is. There's a reason for the big red note at the top. We really do need everyone to terminate or extend employees that have expired expected end dates. And we have also been talking about this one for quite a while, and we're just going to keep talking about it because it really is a critical path to making sure that this project goes well when we hit the day that we need to convert everybody over. If the expected end date on any employee is prior to October 1st of this year, and it isn't either terminated or extended ahead of this conversion, we're going to create the position, but we're not going to be able to move the employee into it. And the funding grid won't be created. So the conversion will be about half done. We'll know what position they were supposed to go into, but with an expected end date, we're not able to take any action at all on the job. And so what's going to have to happen after the conversion is departments are going to need to manually move employees into positions if they're still active. And if that's not done prior to the 20th of October, at payroll lockout, then all of the charges for those employees are going to move to suspense, and then you'll need a PAT action to correct each payroll until you move the funding into a position. So when we're talking about this, I always think of the old commercial. I'll probably date myself, you know, you can pay me now or you can pay me later. It's really work that has to happen. It's just when do you choose to do the work and how simple or difficult will that work be? And so we really want to, again, big red note at the top. We want to highlight that this work is happening. There are currently queries that you can pull that provide you with the information we're looking for, or that you need to do this work. We are also going to be sending out a cleanup list out to all the HR officers and MOU leads, just again to make sure that everybody's seeing this list and that we're doing everything we can to make it simple for you to get this done. Again, it really is a critical need. We are really asking everybody to help us out here. Okay, a few other cleanup items that we have asked folks to do. We've asked folks to abolish unnecessary vacant positions. We have had a lot of activity on this. We also offered to mass abolish any, if the schools or divisions could provide them to us. We got about 17,000 identified for abolishment, and that will be happening. We have that list, and we'll be doing that soon. For information on vacant positions that you can look at, see if you need to abolish. If you look under the reporting tile on your homepage in Connect Carolina and go to the HR payroll reporting dashboard, you can run reports on vacant positions to see who's out there. Another thing that we've asked folks to clean up is we've asked where appropriate, those are important words to start with, we've asked to move supplemental pay to secondary jobs. Now for SHRA folks, it's going to be business as usual. We need supplements rolled into base pay. But for EHRA, there are a lot of cases where really that supplemental pay could be moved to a secondary job. And we're asking folks to do that. And, you know, I said in the beginning, when appropriate, we say that because sometimes there are compliance reasons or financial reasons that money needs to be kept separate. And we totally understand that. Those are cases where you have to leave it the way it is. But otherwise, we're asking for that move to be made. The other cleanup that we've been asking about, you've heard me talk about reports to already, just getting the reports to and supervisor IDs updated. If we can get everything cleaned up ahead of time, then it's a lot less manual fixing when we get to the other side of the project. Okay, and then last but not least, our fourth topic, just some tips and some facts. We want to highlight the fact there's really no concept of a secondary position. We talk about primary and secondary jobs, but there are not primary and secondary positions. Positions just are. And so those and other non-recruitable positions may have less detail involved. Position updates are going to continue to update job data just as they do today. I call it some of the things you put in position updates trickle down to job and show up as a row on job data. That will continue as it does. We've talked about the position budget salary field that's changing from the allocated budget field. It is going to be optional, but in the future, there may be processes that require that number to be in there. So while we may not require it from a Connect Carolina standpoint, there may be other cases where folks will say you need to go in and enter that so it can be interfaced someplace else. So that may be coming. Just wanted to note it. And then, as we said, we're not able to change right now other EPARs as a part of the project. We'd love to, and we know that those changes are coming, but there are going to be some differences when we get there based on the fact that there's still 2.9. The higher EPAR won't require a position when you're hiring an EHRA employee, just like it does not now. You'll need to go ahead and make sure that a position's established and that you're entering that. And again, that's from an origination standpoint, but also for approvals. We're going to be asking approvers to really look in and make sure that there's no leftovers from the old way of doing things when the new positions are coming in. Also, the Fund Swap EPAR is not going to require that it be based on position. Right now, you can choose appointment or position, and you'll still have that choice. When we get past the conversion, the proper answer will be position only is what you should be choosing. And again, originators and approvers, we just want to make sure that everybody's looking at that. There is going to be a conversion period where, habits are hard to break sometimes. So just want everybody to be making sure to keep an eye on that. And I think that is everything I have. I'll hand it over now to talk about data conversion. Yeah.
Thank you for all of that wonderful information. Now we'll turn it over to Christine Williams to cover several topics, starting with data conversion.
Thank you, Rebecca. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. And I really hate to follow Dave. That was really smooth. Dang. A lot of my slides are a little bit more technical in nature, so I'll try not to bore you to death here. Let's see. So the first item is data conversion. What the heck does that mean? Basically, what we are doing is creating positions for any employee who doesn't already have a position, and then assigning reporting relationships based on those newly created positions. We are saying we are moving all active employees into positions, and all means all. So secondary jobs, faculty, contingent workers, temps, postdoc, student workers, all those things that you see on this slide. Yes, every single active employee who doesn't currently have a position will have a position after we do our data conversion. And everyone who has a supervisor currently will now have a reports to. So our org structure will be based on position numbers, no longer a combination of supervisors and position numbers. The third piece of this is the position budget amount. This is a field that's currently on the position. We are going to be populating it as part of our data conversion using the information from the current incumbent's job data info. So for a position that's created for somebody's primary job, then the position budget amount will be equal to their base salary. For positions that are created based on anyone's secondary job, any supplemental pay that is on that secondary job will be converted into an annualized rate, and that will be the starting position budget amount for that position. So this is just a snapshot in time. This is as the data exists at the time of our data conversion. Interfaces, techie topic. Okay, keep going. So Vicki mentioned the System Office HR Data Mart. We send data to them every single month, tons and tons and tons of data you can't even imagine. And one thing that we do when we send that data every month is reference a custom position table, also fondly referred to sometimes as the fake position table. Oops, can you go back, Rebecca? There you go. So we will be modifying our interfaces so that they no longer look at the custom or the fake position data table, and instead we use real position data. the system office requires in the interface that we send a position for every single person. So if we don't have one, we create one currently. So we'll be replacing that process with something that is entirely more accurate. Okay, Rebecca, go ahead. So people admin, and this slide has some animation on it. Rebecca, if you want to just click a couple of more times. So as we've been going through this project, we talked a lot about how our data in Connect Carolina feeds over to our recruiting system, which is people admin. So the first step at that top part of the slide is the position EPAR. As you are completing the position EPAR, what do we need to collect from you? So we made some decisions in that area. And then we modified the EPAR appropriately, which is what was included in Dave's section, those new fields that are on the position EPAR. Then we had to decide, all right, we've collected it. Now what are we going to send? So we made those decisions. And then we modified our people admin feed, that is the process that sends the data from PeopleSoft over to people admin, or Connect Carolina to people admin, to include the new data that we want to send over there. And then finally, once it gets to people admin, what can the end user edit and what should be read only? And again, that was included in one of Dave's previous slides. There are some fields in people admin that will not be editable. And if you needed to change them, you would have to go back into the position EPAR in Connect Carolina, make those changes, fully execute, and then it would go over into people admin on the next feed, which is 5 times a day. Or some fields will be editable in people admin. So all of those were the decision that we made, and lots of different technical configuration. And I'm sorry, I hope you're not asleep. Okay, next slide. People admin. So just a few more points on what we changed there. As I mentioned, we updated the position data feeds, that's sending the data over to that system from ours. We added some new fields to the position and the posting templates. We've relabeled some of the existing fields, which should make it easier to match up where the data came from. I know right now there's a few maybe mismatches where you're like, it's called this thing in people admin, but it's called this thing in Connect Carolina. How do I know? So we've realigned those, so it should be a little bit more intuitive. As I mentioned, some of the fields are read-only, some of them are editable. And then as Dave mentioned, we have an OpenRank job code in Connect Carolina that will allow for multiple incumbents, but it would be only used for recruiting purposes. So you would create the OpenRank job code in Connect Carolina. It would feed over to people admin. You would recruit for it. And then once you knew the appropriate rank for the incumbent, then you would assign them, you would hire them into the position with the appropriate rank. You wouldn't hire them into the OpenRank job code. Hopefully that makes sense. Next slide. All right, reports and queries. So on the HR payroll reporting dashboard, which I'm sure you are all familiar with, it has a plethora of information available to you anytime, real time. This is a new query and it's out there now. Fund swap by position. So you are able to enter the position number, and then the query is going to tell you if there has been an EPAR, a fund swap EPAR in particular, submitted for that position number. And it will show you all EPARs from all time, not just if there's one in progress. If there were 10 fund swap EPARs processed against a position and in the lifetime that we've been live with Connect Carolina, you will see them all in this report. So we think that this is going to be something that is super helpful. Again, it's out there now. Go ahead and run it. Access position EPAR approval routing info, right? So it will tell you where it is in the approval routing process. It's going to show you the position budget amount in the report results, along with if there's a current incumbent and what their salary is. So you'll have that information right there. It's available to HR reps, basic originators, and student originators.
Christine, just real quick, will accounting and finance be able to access this query?
We are talking about that. There's some really good conversations going on about that right now, so more to come.
Thank you.
Yep. We know they want it. Okay, the vacant position report. So this includes vacant positions with a bunch of information, including the budget amount for the position, prior incumbent information, if there's an EPAR in progress, and then there's different filter options so that you can slice and dice your data however you would like. Parallel work, I think this is my last section. So, yep. So along with full position management, this project sort of has some tentacles, some things that relate but aren't necessarily directly under the umbrella of full position management. So this is the list. I'm not going to read it to you, but I think we do have a slide for each one of these items. So if you want to go ahead to position location. So on the position EPAR, there'll be some new location fields. So you will identify if a position is in North Carolina, in the United States, but not in North Carolina, or outside of the United States. And then this information will flow over to people admin and may or may not be displayed depending on the settings for the particular position and a bunch of other criteria. Next slide. Short work break. So we did this. We extended the configuration for short work break to faculty intermittent. We did this a few months ago. It was in the HR Digest and some other communication channels. So hopefully you already have this information and you're like, yeah, I know this already. Why is she talking about it? Basically, if you're not familiar, using short work break will stop paying the employees while they're out. And then when you return them from their short work break, then they start getting paid again. So this was a big improvement for campus because instead of updating the position to reduce the FTE to 0, and then going and updating their job to remove their compensation while these faculty intermittent were not working, instead of doing that, you just have one action, which is to put them out on the short work break. Their comp stays intact. They just don't get paid until you return them. Next slide, please. Retro pay. So this was a change on the payroll side. Prior to this code change, if there was a retroactive payroll transaction, let's say a retro pay increase that got submitted for an employee, once that retro pay was processed, it would distribute based on the current funding for the employee. What this change has done was made the system smarter so that when the distribution occurs, it actually uses the funding sources in place at the time of those retroactive earnings, if that makes sense. So if my retro pay went back to June, and in June I had different funding sources, and then July I had different funding sources, and then August I had different funding sources, and this is all getting paid in September, it's going to distribute across the way that it should and not just to what is in place in September as it did before. So this is a huge improvement. Just a note, oh, sorry, go back real quick. Not all historical earnings factor into the distribution, and so those notes are mobile devices, longevity, et cetera. All right, Gideon Taylor 3.3, what in the world is that? That is what we use to create and maintain our EPARs. As Dave mentioned, we are not able to update the existing EPARs that are in 2.9 as part of this project. So the higher EPAR, for example, the fund swap EPAR is another example. Those are using the previous version and we can't change them right now, but it is on the horizon. And in order to do those, we needed to first complete an upgrade of that software. So again, I'm sorry, techie here, but this was a big chunk of work. It was really important behind the scenes stuff that had to happen. And now it's in place. We've done it, it's there, we're good. And so now once we wrap up this full position management project, we can turn our attention to the existing forms and making them better, making them more intuitive, streamlining processes. As Dave mentioned, there's some situations as a result of full position management where you will have to do 2 EPARs instead of 1. And we would really, really like to just make that a temporary process. Long-term, go back to just one EPAR. So that's a goal. Next slide. Finally, the online SHRA position description project, that was something that was going on last year. It was placed on hold and now has been rolled into this effort. So just to refresh your memory, we'll be moving from paper position descriptions to online position descriptions. We've configured some standard principal functions so that everyone will be selecting from a drop-down box and entering the information on their position. So reporting will be much easier and much more accurate. You all will have 1 year from when we go live to move your position descriptions online. That is copying and pasting or typing the information into the system. Once the information is in the system, you'll have the ability to print it. So how awesome is that going to be? I know that's something that's going to be a huge win. And then the final note here is that it'll be implemented concurrently with full position management. We've rolled that project right into this one, so it will go live at the same time. Student originator security. Dave also touched on this. When we went live with Connect Carolina originally, I understand that it just wasn't known how much security access would be appropriate for our student originators. We thought that they would need to submit transactions for everyone in the organization and that we couldn't limit them to just specific data. And so they've had that access, but because they had that access, the forms that they could see and submit have been very limited. So we've taken a look at that as part of this project, and we're super excited to extend the functionality for the student originators. I know that you all are excited. I saw a lot of yays in the chat earlier, and in previous meetings, people are expressing that they're super excited about this. So student originators will be able to access the multiple job summary page, and that includes future dated rows, which they are not currently able to see. They'll also be able to get to the vacant position query and the expected end date query on the dashboard. And then they're going to have data security. So they will only be able to submit transactions for their own organization. And we looked at the data before we made that decision. And what we found is since go live, only 1% of student actions actually were for someone outside of their own organization. So it definitely makes sense to refine their security and lock them down to just their own organization, like everyone else. Next slide. Auto terms. So this is something that came up during our conversations of this project, but that we will implement after we go live with full position management. What we would like to do is automatically terminate jobs based on the expected end date for some additional employee groups. So on the left-hand side of your screen, you see the employee types that currently get auto-termed. And then on the right-hand side of your screen, you see the employee groups that we would like to roll into that auto-term process. Post go live, we don't have a date for that, but it is on our radar.
Thanks, Christine.
Sure,
Thanks for all
thank you.
that tech information. We'll turn it back over to Vicki Bradley to talk about what's out of scope and the timeline.
Great, thanks, Rebecca. Okay, so there is a whole lot of work with a full position management project. And right now we're focused on the position forms and things that need to work there. We are not going to be modifying the other EPARs. So we will not be modifying the hire form, the update job form. We're only focusing on the position form. So we are looking at some future enhancements. One, Dave had mentioned that sometimes it'll take 2 forms to get something done, like if you're changing FTE on position and then changing the compensation on job. So we are going to be looking at fixing that so that in the future you can just do one EPAR and it will write to both position and to job. So that was something that we would like to see happen as soon as we can. There are some other custom attributes. We have some attributes right now that are stored on job. rather than on position, and we would like to move them. And those were the things I was talking about before, like CDME, the Clery Act, things like that. We would want to put on position instead of on job. So we'll start working on that in the future as well. And then one thing that we've heard from campus a lot is they would like to have fund swaps that allow them to change funding across multiple positions at the same time. So that is something that we're considering. That is a huge job and would be very difficult to do. So that's not something we can tackle now, but it is on the list of something we would like to tackle in the future if we can. So those are out of scope for now, but hopefully we'll be able to do them soon. So what is the timeline for the full position management project? So we've been discussing full position management and determining how it will work with the university for quite some time. We've discussed this with HR officers, HR liaisons from the different schools and divisions for months. We've also been meeting with the finance leads from various large schools and divisions and offices like the budget office since last summer. So we've gone through and listed all of the requirements for what needs to happen in order to make full position management work. Then in April, we began the design and development. So we've been making the changes in the system. And then in May, we started testing, just, small little testing just like the position itself. As we got into, June, July, and August, we started doing testing where things reach into other aspects of the system and start writing to other areas, not just updating the position, but having information flow to other areas of the system, which is what we call integration testing. And we're now at the point where we're starting user acceptance testing. We've brought in several users, some HR representatives, some basic users, some approvers from campus folks to start taking a look at the way the system's been configured and designed and see if it works appropriately. So we are starting user acceptance testing that will go throughout August. And then by the time we get to September, we'll be doing more of the campus training. And as you can tell today, we're getting more and more into communications to make sure everyone is aware of this and ready for the upcoming change. So September, our focus will be on training and communications, and then in October, we'll be going live. So go live planning. The cutover weekend will occur the weekend of October 8th through the 10th. This is when we'll make the system changes for full position management, and those conversion items that Christine mentioned will occur over that weekend. New positions will be created with an effective date of October 1. Employees who are not in a position will be put into a position, and they will have a job data row inserted with a position effective date, again, of October 1. So that's a key date. We will need to stop all HR actions a couple of days before the conversion weekend. Now, this hasn't been communicated yet. We're just kind of telling you now, and there will be future communications outlining all of this about the freeze. We will implement a freeze as of October 6th. That means no new HR action should be initiated from October 6th until after we go live on October 11th. Any actions that have been initiated must be fully executed by October 7th. So anything started but not fully through the system and not fully executed will be denied as we head into the conversion weekend, and they will have to be started over again once we go live. Now, actions like lump sum payments, fund swaps, PATs, those kind of actions are fine, but anything that has to do with an employee and their job will have to be started over again come October 11th. So again, we'll be sending out more communications with that. I'm giving the more detail about that, but we wanted to just let you see what would be happening over the conversion weekend and between now and go live. Okay. So the important thing to know right now is what HR actions can be processed and what HR actions can't be processed, given that we're moving to full position management in October. We've published information spelling this out in a memo to HR officers, which should have been cascaded out to HR representatives in some manner. And we've also published this information in the HR Digest. So remember I mentioned on the previous slide that the effective date for creating positions and putting people into positions is October 1st. That's the key date. The general rule is that you should only enter actions with effective dates before October 1st and to hold all actions with effective dates after October 1st, 2021. That means right now you should be holding all actions with effective dates after October 1st. After we go live on the 11th, you'll be able to start on October 11th, you'll be able to start submitting HR actions with effective dates after October 1st. Now, there are some instances where HR actions can't be held, such as when someone is hired or they transfer from a temp to a perm position and their benefits need to start, or when someone is leaving the university for some reason. For those actions, you'll be able to submit EPARs with the effective date before October 13th. So you don't have to hold them if their effective date is after the 1st. They can go through if they have an effective date before October 13th. But you should not process any actions on or after October 13th. Then once we go live with full position management, you can pick up starting processing these actions again. So this is a lot of information on the slide. It has already been published. If you haven't seen it, talk to your HR officer, look in the HR digest, because this is important information.
Great,
Next
thank
slide.
you, Vicki.
Mhm.
Okay. So I'll turn it over to Anita Collins to talk about preparing for the change. Hi, Anita.
Hi there. Hi, everyone. I just want to spend just a couple of minutes talking about how we're going to help everyone get ready for this change, because I know we have a lot of questions and they look like some really good ones. So just quickly, we have 3 groups that we need to prepare for this change. So everyone on this call, obviously, so HR reps, student originators, and basic originators. So as Vicki mentioned, the project team has been communicating for a while with the HR Council, Business Process Subcommittee, and the HR liaisons, but this meeting really marks the start of the broader communications. So you've probably gotten an invitation already, or you will get one right after this meeting for another user group meeting on the 29th. So today we wanted to give you the general overview of the changes, kind of understand what's happening, and then we'll dive into the details in that meeting. You'll also see articles coming out in the HR Digest and the Connect Carolina newsletter and other places where we can get information out. And we'll be doing some targeted emails. So they're just, as you've already seen, there are a lot of changes in a lot of different areas. So kind of corralling those and making sure that you have the information you need to see them in one place will be important, because I don't think there's any way you can remember all of these changes all at the same time. So we'll be communicating and telling you where to find resources. As we mentioned, the user groups meetings will be part of the training. Christine and Erica Guestin are creating some micro videos, which I'm really excited about. So they're going to be doing some quick videos, very short, that highlight specific changes. So look for those coming out soon. We're updating all of the online training and documentation, and that is quite a sizable effort. There are 14 online training sessions that need to be updated. But the nice thing for us is that it's giving us an opportunity to make sure they're more accessible, and we're shortening them a little bit. So that'll benefit new HR representatives and new student originators in the future. We'll also do a quick reference card that lists the changes. We think right now that we're going to organize it by EPAR, so that you'll be able to, when it goes live, you'll be able to pull that card out and remind yourself of what the changes are for each of the EPARs that you need to do. Okay, so another audience is finance leads in each school and division, and so they they're experiencing a change related to budgeting for positions, and we want to make sure that they understand what's going on and have the information that they need. So Vicki presented at the finance and budget meeting last Friday. We're holding a special meeting for them next week, and we're also going to be including some updates in the finance version of the HR Digest. Approvers will also need to know what's going on, so we'll be doing targeted communications for them. We'll also do a quick reference card or some kind of document that tells the approvers what to look for when approving EPARs. For example, the fact that people can submit a higher action without a position and we no longer want them to, that'll be on that quick reference card. And then again, they have online training as well that we'll be updating. And then also, I just want to mention and give a shout out to that we have campus representation on the project team. So thank you for those of you on the call who are giving that time. And then we also have campus representation on the sponsor committee. So that gives us really valuable immediate feedback on decisions and our approaches, including the change management approach. So happy to answer any questions if you want to type anything in the chat, but I'll turn it back over to Rebecca so we can get to these questions.
Thanks, Anita. Yes, we do have some time left for questions that have been coming in. Usually the number one question is, will the slides be available? Yes, they will. You can see at the bottom of the screen there, recording and slides will be available on CC Info, probably Monday. So just go to CC Info, and then click on the HR payroll heading and user group, and you'll be able to find all of this information. So starting with the first question that came in, let's see. Okay, so will chair supplements still have separate EPARs from the base salary when updating the fund source, or will this be combined when everything rolls to a position? Currently, this is 2 records.
It will stay as 2 separate records,
Okay,
and a fund swap would need to be done on the position that the chair is in.
Okay.
But the hope is in the future that fund swap could cover all active appointments and positions. But when we go live with full position management, they will still be separate.
okay, thanks, Corey. I think there was just kind of a clarifying question here. Position budget amount, does that get fed to people admin?
No, it will not.
Okay. If you hold as approver, how do the other approvers access the EPAR? Or is the one who put it on hold the only one who can approve?
Yep, I can jump on that one. And basically, the other approvers aren't able to access it while it's on hold. Only the person who has placed it on hold will see it in their list of EPARs to evaluate, and it will show us on hold. So they would be able to reopen it while nobody else would see it in their list.
And I think this might have been answered, but does this apply to graduate students?
And I think that was related to the data cleanup for terminate or extend employees with expired end dates. The grad students get auto termed. So if they reach their end date prior to October 1st, they will be auto termed. But if they need to be extended, then yes, that should be done prior to October 1 if they have an expected end date prior to October 1, if they are to continue.
Can instructions for running queries be sent out or linked?
Yes, we're working on that.
Okay.
That's going to be part of the micro videos that Anita mentioned.
Is there a possibility that the ARP data entry this year will coincide with the launch of the full position management? If yes, what's the plan?
Ooh, I'll jump on that one. Yes, there is a possibility that the ARP data entry will coincide. And there is sort of 2 parts of that we talk about when we're talking about it getting in the way of full position management. Number one is, we're going to have a lot of new salaries to load. That's a technical problem. And there's going to be a lot of actions, after 7/1 that we're going to have to adjust for. And I'm very confident that we, over the years, have gotten better and better at loading corrections. And so I don't have a lot of concerns about that conflict. The one that concerns, I think, everybody on the call would be the volume of work on an ARP that would go out to campus. So folks having to figure out the salaries and enter them into a spreadsheet that we'll then take and use to load. And that's a more difficult question. The timing is difficult because our legislature is still talking about it and we don't know how long they're going to talk. It looks like they're not too far apart. I'm hoping they can make a decision in August, and that gives us, what we need to do for September. It's always a couple weeks to get the rules back. So just depending on when they make that decision depends on what month we're forced into as far as this activity. If the volume, if they put it right in the way and the volume is too high for campus to get any work done around this, we're going to have to look at that. And we know we're going to have to look at that. It's not like we're going to go forward with everything regardless of any bad outcomes or questionable things that we're going to have to do. So it's a long-winded way of saying we have a plan. We have a lot of plans because there's a lot of things they could do. And so we really just have to wait. We know that we have to make adjustments and that it could affect the go live of full position management. We have to wait for them to make the answers so that we can see what's going on.
Thanks, Dave. This is a clarification question. EHRA employees like TAs and TFs, will they now need a position number?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Can someone touch on the difference between a secondary job and a secondary position?
Yeah, and this does cause a little bit of confusion. When you look on job data, excuse me, where an employee has multiple jobs, there's always one that's primary, and it's listed as primary. There's a field, primary, secondary. And that's the job, that job rules them all, as it were, and that department has the primary assignment. Everything else is marked as secondary. There is no field on position that identifies it as primary. When you create a position, you can use that for a primary job or a secondary job. There is nothing on the position that designates it as one or the other. A position is just a position and can be used for a primary or secondary job as needed.
Thanks, Dave. For faculty secondary administrative appointments with supplements, will the departments required to create a position description following the standard format, position summary required, and preferred qualifications, etc.?
You will be required to fill out some sort of position description, but depending on your employee type, faculty, EHRA, non-faculty, SHRA, perm, you will get different fields that are either required or even accessible to fill out, as optional. And so I can't remember what's shown on faculty secondary, but I know that there will be some position description fields that are shown. Some will be optional, I'm not sure. I don't think any are required. Corey, do you remember? I'm sorry to put you on the spot.
I do believe if it is an ample group of faculty, that the position description fields, position summary, minimum education and experience requirements, preferred, those are all required fields.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I just couldn't remember. I appreciate that, Corey. Thanks.
Yeah.
For EHRA student positions and any position really with multiple headcounts, can that number be flexible?
It can be flexible as in it's other than one. So you can have more. Again, the thing to remember is that just about everything about the students that you're putting into that position have to be alike, because if you make a change to the position, it's going to change that for any job that's attached to it. So that's really the key. It is flexible. You can use for EHRA students, you can have more than one. Again, you just want to make sure everything matches.
Okay. Will position location include virtual?
No. The position location is really, if I were to hire this position again, where would it be sitting? And so I look at this, if it's a job in, it's not really trying to track whether that position is going to be a virtual position or not. What we're saying is, for example, if there's a department on campus, UNC Chapel Hill, if they were hiring, that position would be in Chapel Hill. Now, School of Medicine may open up, have a partnership with a hospital in Arizona or a school in Arizona with a hospital. And so if they were hiring positions for that organization, they'd be hiring in Arizona. And so that's how that is really looked at, is where's the actual physical location that's going to be.
Okay. Someone has students who move from senior teaching fellow to teaching assistant in any order, semester by semester. And this person's thinking that would be 3 positions. If they're paying someone to teach from trust or have a student on a visa, those would be different. Those would be additional positions. How easy will it be to create those extra positions?
I feel like it's, I don't know. I guess this is just my personal opinion, but I feel like it's pretty easy because the ePAR allows you to create new positions and use a copy feature. And in certain cases, based on what you're describing here, I don't know that you'd be creating a new position necessarily. You would be reclassifying or updating the job code of an existing position. So it kind of depends on the situation. Teaching fellow to teaching assistant might be an update to an existing position. And then you might have situations where you need to transfer somebody into a new position with a different job code. Creating those positions should be fairly straightforward and quick.
One last question, because some people second it, is some position descriptions might need updating. When moving position descriptions online, will it go through the competency review, et cetera, at that time, or will it just be flagged for review the next time it comes open?
No, it will be reviewed at that time. And so any of these will go through either APO or EHR non-faculty or class and comp, and they will be doing the reviews that are needed at that point.
Okay. Great, thank you. It is 11 o'clock, and so we can adjourn this meeting. And there are a couple of questions left to answer. And BAs, I don't know if, do you want to just stay and continue answering these for the recording's sake? Or would it be easier to just, we can post the Q&A somewhere?
Rebecca, this is Vicki. I think we can just post the Q&A somewhere since I
Okay.
think people have meetings at 11.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you all for joining, and we will see you again in September.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Rebecca. Thanks all.